Hi everyone, my name is Kelly Santarosa. I'm a Senior Policy Analyst with AUMA. Welcome to our webinar today for municipalities that contract or are getting close to needing to contract RCMP Police Services. I'm really pleased to have three guests with us today. Inspector Shane Ramchamal from RCMP K Division, Rita Ramkasoon, also from RCMP K Division, and Cheryl Beck from Alberta Justice and Solicitor General. So our webinar today, basically, we just want to give you an update from our last Contract Management Committee meeting. Is this slide moving? This slide is not moving. There we go. Okay. So if you don't know what the Contract Management Committee is, we'll talk a bit about that. Really, the purpose of this is to check in with you as contract partners, give you the opportunity to ask questions, identify issues that you would like us to raise at the Contract Management Committee. So I'll give a quick overview of the committee's structure and mandate. We'll do a few high-level updates from the meeting, talk about some new cost items, as well as RCMP vacancies and resource management. And then I'll just do a quick update on where AUMA is at with the Police Act review, and then we've got lots of time for questions and discussion at the end. Okay, so the Contract Management Committee, or CMC, I'm sure you guys all know, we contract the police to provide policing services either through a Provincial Police Services Agreement or your own Municipal Police Services Agreements. And these agreements are 20 years. The last agreements were signed in 2012. They don't expire until 2032. It's a long time for a contract. Issues crop up. So there's a Contract Management Committee that's basically established as a forum where the RCMP and all of the contract partners, so municipal, provincial, and federal government, can consult with each other and try to resolve any issues related to the contract policing. The CMC is basically mandated to analyze and respond to any changes that are proposed by the federal government or the RCMP, or recommend any changes that they see fit. So the committee will look at issues and proposals that could affect governance, costs, quality, capacity of the RCMP, and they provide advice and feedback. So that's things like changes to RCMP standards or operational policies that could increase or decrease costs for the contract partner, things like new equipment requests, body armor, ballistic shields. Those kinds of things would be brought to the CMC to analyze. People would share their feedback on the impact, and the results of the discussions and a copy of the records are provided to the relevant decision makers. So I just want to highlight the Contract Management Committee isn't a decision-making table itself. It's more of an advisory table. And our role at these meetings, AUMA, we're there primarily to share information. So we want to pass along what we hear from the committee to you, and we want to give you guys a chance to pass along issues to that table. We've partnered with Justice and Solicitor General and the RCMP to have these webinars after CMC meetings to just kind of facilitate that two-way flow of information. And so we hope you guys all find them helpful. If you have any feedback or suggestions for improvement or other ways that you'd like us to hold these discussions, just let me know. Okay. So who attends the CMC meeting? So there's one representative from each of the provinces and territories that have police service agreements with the RCMP. So that's everyone except Ontario and Quebec. Bill Sweeney, and usually who attends is the Assistant Deputy Minister that's responsible for policing or public safety for the province. So in Alberta, that's Bill Sweeney. There's also a representative from Public Safety Canada. It's the Assistant Deputy Minister responsible for policing and public safety, currently Ellen Burrock. The RCMP, the Deputy Commissioner responsible for contracting and Aboriginal policing attends, currently Brian Bennon. And then provincial and territorial representatives can also appoint one associate member to represent municipalities. So Justice and Solicitor General has very kindly appointed AUMA to have a representative, and right now that's Tanya Thorne from the AUMA board. So the committee is chaired by the Public Safety Canada representative and one of the provincial territorial representatives, and that's a rotating one. And so right now it's Alan Lucier, who is with the government of the Yukon. So there's quite a few items that the CMC is discussing right now. Most of them are still pending decisions, so we don't really know what cost impact they'll have on you. So rather than going through that list, we thought it would be a better use of time to go over the new cost items that have been approved and will be rolling out to try to give you an idea of what you're looking at, how you can plan for them. And yeah, I will turn things over to Shane to talk about that. Inspector Shane.
That's all right. Thanks, Kelly. Good afternoon, everybody. If you are having any trouble hearing us on the line, just please let us know. So as Kelly mentioned, there's a number of items that are discussed at the CMC level regarding new equipment, and not all equipment that's discussed at that table is approved for various reasons. So what I want to cover is there's 6 items that are sort of in the hopper. Some are still pending approval at our Senior Executive Committee level. Other items are going to roll out in some order of fashion as planning and training and whatnot is arranged. So I'll go over those 6 items now, and then we can kind of, if there's any questions afterwards, please ask. So when the first item is what's referred to as, we call them ballistic shields, but they're called portable ballistic shields. So what that is it provides members an extra measure of safety whenever they're involved in certain situations. The shield can actually supplement their soft and hard body armor that they wear whenever there's a need to deploy the shields. So training obviously will look at containment as well as officer and citizen rescues in exigent circumstances to preserve life. Right now the threat level of protection is based on the National Institute of Justice at a level 4. And it's the same standard as our hard body armor currently being used by our members in the field. So at this point in time, there has been some consultation between our Assistant Commissioner in charge of contract and Indigenous policing to all our CROPS officers in the provinces. And that feedback has been provided regarding challenges that the project is going to have, regarding things such as funding and training. And so the cost for these is estimated somewhere in between the $8,000 to $10,000 range. So while there's a new standard that's expected to come out from the National Institute of Justice sometime this year, our National Use of Force has reviewed the standard and amended specifications, and we're just waiting on sort of those standards to come out, and then it'll be provided to senior management for approval. So at this point in time, we haven't determined if the ballistic shields will be mandatory as equipment for every detachment, and nor do we know, if so, if it is mandatory, what the minimum number would be for each detachment. So at this point in time, based on obviously training, funding, and then minimum standards, we're not quite sure what that's going to look like yet. So it's still in the hopper for decision. Based on my thoughts, I don't see this coming for at least another year, but it could end up near the end of 2019. So, our fiscal 2019-2020. So you could see something in your 2020 fiscal years. At this point in time, we're not certain, but we will be including it on the multi-year financial plans as an item that may come about. So for your information on that. The second item is breaching equipment. So we have a course that we provide to all our members, and it's referred to as IARD, or the regular phrase, Immediate Action Rapid Deployment Training. So what that is whenever we have barricaded persons or an immediate threat happening in a building, our members are trained how to enter those buildings and deal with the threats that are within those buildings. So whether it's an active shooter or armed and barricaded persons or so on and so forth. So there's this level of training that the members are getting throughout the country in relation to this. But with that also comes this equipment. And so during the training, the members are introduced to the equipment on how to breach barricades, how to breach doors, and defeat fortified barricades so that they can get through and deal with the active threats that are beyond those barricades. At this point in time, there's no breaching tools that are approved, so they're still in stages of being looked at and establishing standards that would meet our requirements. So at this point, if we do end up buying the equipment, it would probably be one set of equipment per car is sort of the initial thoughts. And the cost range is, because we haven't decided yet, and there's 9 different types of breaching tools, the range is from $160 to $2,000 per tool. So we're not quite sure what we're going with yet. So again, a decision that's still pending on a number of sort of venues here related to whether it's going to be mandatory, what type of equipment we'll use, and how we'll deploy it. So something that's still in the hopper, and our policy and training is also still under development on this. So once that's been finalized, then we can determine which tool will be selected. The third item, bump helmets. So typically when our public order units, some of you have heard the STOW team, so our team that, you know, they handle a bunch of different calls for service, from evidence gathering to public order incidents and so on and so forth. When they get deployed initially, based on the risks and what's happening, they start with a low risk by wearing a baseball helmet, and it really doesn't protect the members in any regards. And so what has been looked at from our officer standards perspective is these bump helmets that will be coming at some point. They're only for public order teams, so we don't see an impact on the municipal contracts at this point. But again, further discussions to be had on that. And then there's still some CMC consultation taking place with that. And units, the public order units, will be assessing what they require when the time comes for approval. So I don't see this one impacting the municipal contracts too much, but something for you to be aware of nonetheless. Fourth item, extended range impact weapon, which we refer to as the 40 millimeter less lethal, is a pilot project that's currently underway. It started June 1st, 2018 and will end in May 31st of 2019. And what this is it's an impact, an extended range impact weapon. So it's basically similar to a shotgun, but it's like a bean bag round that's utilized. And so it's less lethal, but it can have a great impact on situations when dealing with violent individuals who could be potentially armed as well. So it is intended for general duty use. Again, it's under a pilot at this point, so we won't know until after May 31st what the plans will be for its rollout. I can tell you that we've used it 19 times since its pilot inception on June 1st, so it's being utilized. Work is still underway, obviously, for a standing offer agreement on these types of munitions, and draft policy is being reviewed as well. So this could be an item that we might see in fiscal 19-20, but not sure at this point, depending on the results of the pilot project when it's completed. The fifth item is hard body armor. So currently we rolled out back in I'll say about 2010, 2011, some hard body armor, and we didn't provide it to each member at the time. It was so many units of hard body armor were assigned to each detachment. And now we're looking at, there is a newer, obviously better hard body armor out there that's less cumbersome, less heavier, and a lot more easier to manage. And we're exploring those new standards as well. We're also contemplating providing each member with their own personalized issue hard body armor. Again, this is something that's still under development as well, and hasn't been even presented to our senior executive committee in Ottawa for a decision, but it's something that's being discussed, and I'm not sure the conversations are on the CMC table on this, but it's something that will be coming once it's approved, if in fact it is approved. So something to, probably we won't see this for probably at least 2 years, I suspect, based on the way it's going at this point. So. And the last item is pistol modernization. So the last time we changed firearms, our handguns, was in the mid-1990s to the Smith & Wesson 9mm. And so a study is currently taking place on modernizing our pistol to ensure our members are appropriately equipped, as well as they can do their job in a safe and efficient manner. This is something that hasn't been presented to the Senior Executive Committee as well. So it still hasn't moved forward through an approval process at that point. There is many I'll say stumbling blocks that need to be to go through on this one. Obviously, we need to look at what is the best for our members, what will meet our needs, as well as the cost implications and the rollout. So once, if this is approved, which I suspect it will be, once it is approved, it will still take 24 months before rollout will take place. So right now we're forecasting about 2022, maybe even 2023 to see the new rollout of a selected new firearm. So anyway, those are the 6 new items that are sort of in the hopper that are receiving the most attention, and we'll probably see something to an approval later on down the road. I'll turn it back over to Kelly.
Yeah, thanks very much, Shane. So I just wanted to share a bit as well about what was discussed at the last meeting on 2 of the higher priority issues, labor relations and occupational health and safety strategy. So I think you guys are all aware of pending unionization of the RCMP. So Treasury Board Canada came into the meeting and gave us a bit of an update on the process and the timelines leading up to potential negotiations. So the Bill C-62 that enables unionization, it's been passed and it received royal assent, but there's still some ongoing legal challenges. So the federal government is appealing a Supreme Court decision that said that staffing and pensions could be part of collective bargaining. They don't seem really positive about winning that appeal, so I think it's likely that the pensions, staffing and pensions will be part of the collective bargaining process. There's also a constitutional challenge going on as to whether Francophone members should be represented by the same bargaining agent as the rest of the RCM members. And closing arguments for this challenge are scheduled for the end of March. But really where the Treasury Board is at with what they think the timeline is they're not expecting to reach an agreement with the RCMP until late 2020 or early 2021. And of course that timeline could change depending on court decisions, but that's sort of what they're estimating right now. And if you aren't already aware, it's important that you guys know RCMP pay has been frozen for 2 years. That's when the last agreement expired. And any agreement that they negotiate is likely to be retroactive to January 2017. So we know there's a gap in RCMP pay rates. We don't really know how that's going to translate into bargaining because the bargaining will have to look at total compensation, so the pension and the benefits and all that in addition to salary. It's just, it's hard to predict what the cost impacts are going to be, and we know that's difficult for you guys. But just, if you aren't aware, we want you to be aware that this is coming. We do expect that RCMP policing costs are going to increase because of unionization. So because of this, provinces and territories and municipalities, especially at the last meeting, said that they would really like the opportunity. We're not at that table. That's going to be between Treasury Board and whoever's bargaining for the RCMP once they're unionized. But we would really like a way to raise our concerns and our issues and make sure that they inform that bargaining process. So Treasury Board said they're open to using the Contract Management Committee as the forum to have those discussions so that, we can share information about our concerns. And we've been talking to the province because we also have some shared concerns. We're both in the position where we're paying policing costs. And so some of the things we've identified are things like, we need a flexible agreement. Obviously there's demographic and geographic and regional concerns. So there needs to be the flexibility that lets forces in different areas respond differently depending on their environment, and part of that too is a regionalization. So we'd like the agreement to let us structure policing and service delivery from a regional perspective and make sure that those regional needs are being met. We're also very concerned about a future-focused agreement, making sure that costs are sustainable, RCMP service is sustainable, that we have good policing, members are mentally, healthy overall, but mental health being a big piece of that. And then that feeds into recruitment and retention as well. And of course costs, I'm sure that's the biggest thing on most municipalities' minds. I know police funding for those that pay for directly for policing costs, it's a big chunk of your budget. So, you know, we've emphasized the need for those costs to be sustainable and to get effective service for what we pay for. So if you have specific concerns about unionization, we're going to be talking about it again at the next CMC meeting. You can call me, email me, type in a comment now. Whatever I hear from you, we'll bring up at that meeting. And, you know, I'm happy to take a call from you. Like, if you want to go away and think about it, we're pretty sure costs are the big one for you guys, but if you have other specific concerns, just let me know. Like as I said, the next meeting is in June, and we'd be happy to bring your feedback to the table and just, like I said, facilitate that two-way conversation.
Can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead, Shane.
So sorry, Kelly, sorry to interrupt. Based on the contract negotiations for pay raise and so on and so forth, those haven't started, so there would be no idea to be able to forecast or budget what those would look like. But what we have always said, so for the last 2.5, 3 years that I've been doing the municipal finance presentations, I always encourage our contract partners to budget at least a minimum of 2.5% per year on salaries alone, just in case, you know, it comes in at that level. You know, I think if you have that voice at the table and it's well heard, and again, we, the RCMP, are not at that table. That's between whoever the union is going to be, if that's the case, and Treasury Board. So when those discussions take place, if you have feedback in there, one of the things you might want to say is that, you know, the initial impact in the first year might be significant. So a small bump in the first year followed by, you know, an ability to, if it becomes a significant amount, an ability to pay in subsequent years later on down the road might be an option for yourselves. But again, that's something that we, none of us at this table really have a seat at this point in time. So, but again, our encouragement is 2.5% per year on the salaries. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Shane. Sort of put a number on a big nebulous, ominous thing that you know is coming down.
Contingency management, right? So.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I can just mention one thing as well, it's Cheryl here. At the CMC for June, all the PTs will be presenting collectively their issues. So Alberta, we've already solicited some input and feedback, and we'll be having further discussions with the other PTs to prioritize collectively what the issues are, and that will be the submission that will go forward to Treasury Board.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say most of the PTs are concerned about costs.
Yeah,
as their number one
exactly.
concern as well. So it's not just Alberta saying, hey.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, and like I said, we'll keep you posted on the CMC. We've been trying to make this webinar sort of a standing thing after the meeting, so we keep you in the loop with what we know. So the second update I mentioned was just around the occupational health and safety strategy. So this is a proposal. Again, there's not a decision on it yet. It's pending a decision, but it's looking at RCMP recognizing that the health and safety of members and early identification and intervention is really important to having a stable workforce and helping prevent those vacancies and those long-term absences. So we got a presentation at the meeting on what that occupational health and safety strategy might look like. It focuses sort of three main components: are mental health, fitness, and safety. So the mental health and safety components, there's a significant funding ask to implement those. The fitness strategy can be implemented within existing resources, but there's just kind of a bit of a discussion going on. I think everyone around the table is supportive of making sure members have access to good supports for mental health and safety and fitness. But, you know, the PTs in the municipalities also have questions about the return on investment and the value. So there's a pilot project on that going on right now. And hopefully when we get the results of that pilot project, that'll answer some more of the questions that we have. But that's kind of another discussion that's ongoing. And again, it's hard to say how that will be affected by bargaining if benefits are part of the collective bargaining conversation. but we just wanted to give you a heads up that that's something else that's being discussed right now. Okay, so I'm going to turn things back to Shane for a little bit about RCMP vacancy and resource management.
You bet. Thanks, Kelly. So this one's obviously a really a hot button item most of the time, unfortunately. So when we do an analysis of our vacancy pattern, we look at what we refer to as two different types of vacancies. We look at what we refer to as hard vacancies, so where a position is not encumbered, so a member is not in the position at all, and it's what we refer to as a hard vacancy, where the position is actually vacant. Then we also have what we refer to as soft vacancies, so where members are away on maternity leave, paternity leave, they're off duty sick, they're suspended, or there's other reasons why they're not at work for whatever they are. Those we refer to as the soft vacancies. So in our world, it's the soft vacancies that hurt us the most. So there was a question that was posed by Leduc, and so we did a little bit of analysis on their resources. So for a 32 FTE count, they're currently sitting at 25 resources roughly, with 5 soft vacancies. So you can see where the soft vacancies kind of harm us in that regard. Now, having said that, there are also 3 members that are transferred in from other communities. Now, one community in particular, where this one member is coming from, that member's been waiting, trying to sell their home for 9 months. And the community that they're in, when they first moved into that community, there's 34 homes on the market. And today there's roughly 120, 130 on the market, and the market is not moving very drastically in that regard. So that's the other challenge that we face. So it's not only soft vacancies, but the fact that the economy is such that our members are unable to sell the homes that they're in to actually affect the transfers that they've received. So we're dealing with those challenges as best as we can. Our human resources folks are finding ways to address even the soft vacancies. So when you look at Leduc, and I'm sorry I'm picking on Leduc a bit here, but they have, that's fine, that's mine, just slide it off if you want. Sorry about that. And so when you look at Leduc, we actually have some graduated return to work members there, members that aren't considered full duty members but are still providing some level of service. So while we can't provide can't fill all the spots because we've got the 5 vacancies or the 5 soft vacancies, we still are able to somehow augment with some support in that regard. And the nice thing about those soft vacancies is some of those folks are coming back here in the next 6 months, next 3 to 6 anyway, and so that's going to look promising for Leduc. So that's one aspect of it. The other things, policing is not a highly sought after sort of career anymore. Gone are the days when people wanted to be police officers, and so in talking to our friends in Edmonton and in Calgary, they're feeling the same sort of struggles we are in finding those good women and men to join the ranks of the RCMP. So we do have a very active, proactive, very aggressive recruitment process, and we're still making some enhancements in that regard. But for our fiscal year 1920, we're slating 40 troops to go in, and that's 40 troops of 32 people. And so we're working very hard to fill those spots and get our numbers up, and that's one of the things that are feeding us in holding back some of our positions, right? But having said that, we're also finding ways to augment that recruiting as well. So we're actually going to other police training institutions where people are going through these training programs and they're not being hired by police services, and approaching them, finding ways to provide them the level of training they require to bridge over to the RCMP, and then coming in and joining our ranks. And so that's one of the bigger pieces. So we refer to those as lateral entries from other police services. So we're looking at that in a very aggressive manner as well. And of course, we have our reserves program. So prior to this fiscal year, we were approved in the province of Alberta for 20 reservists. And as of now, our program expanded, and we have 50 positions approved for the province of Alberta. So with that, we're looking to fill those reservist positions. Those are positions that are going to augment the vacancies that you see and help to deal with some of those challenges that we're facing. So again, going back to Leduc, we have 2 members, 2 reserve members there, and so we also have to look at what they're doing. So, and I'm not really picking on Leduc, but we've got one reservist who's handling exhibits and the other one's handling the front counter. And is that working for us, or do we have to reassess that? So those are some of the things we're looking at as well, to try and make sure that those reservists are out there helping the front line, supporting the front line when we've got those vacancies on the front line. So just some of the things that we're doing in regards to our vacancy patterns. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be a few questions on that. So.
Yeah, well, we actually had some questions pre-submitted before the webinar even started.
Right.
So, yeah. So just before we get to questions, I wanted to give you guys a quick update on AUMA's work on the Police Act review. As you know, the province has been engaging. They're willing to open up this legislation. They've sort of talked about it as a multi-year process, although hopefully not as long as the MGA. And then, again, we don't know what's going to happen with the election. But we've struck a Police Act working group. So if you haven't heard about the working group, you can go to that first link there. It has the membership, the terms of reference for the group. Basically, the group is mandated to review the Act, develop some policy recommendations for how policing and community safety can be improved, and also to recommend a new, more equitable funding model to the AUMA board. So right now, and some of you may have been attending the provincial engagement sessions. Right now, we're in the process of developing our first written submission for the province. It's due at the end of March, and we do have a survey out. And just so you guys know, basically the first submission, I'm sure it's going to be the first of many submissions and the first of many AUMA surveys related to policing. The first submission is really about issues identification, and that's just to align with what the province is doing right now. We're going to start looking at solutions development, including a proposal for a new funding model later on this year. So the Government of Alberta also has its own survey out. I encourage you to fill out as many surveys as you can stand to. We don't get the Government of Alberta information, and we don't share our information with them. So if you can do both, that's great. I know it's a bit of a time suck, and you could probably spend the rest of your life filling out surveys if you were really that excited about surveys. But yeah, the survey responses will help inform our submission. So if you can do that, great. Sort of what we hear most about, again, is costs in the police funding model. We've also heard a bit about gaps in police service coverage, value for money, response times, capacity to respond to social and mental health issues, and abilities of municipalities to set or influence local policing priorities. So those are kind of the things that we've been hearing. If you have other things, again, just feel free. Anything police-related or even cannabis-related, just contact me. I am the AUMA person for those things. So I think we'll go to questions now, and thanks for all the questions, guys. We've got quite a few lined up. We'll start with Cameron from Leduc, not to pick on Leduc. We're totally picking on Leduc. Cameron submitted some questions in advance, so we'll do those first. His first question was, if your RCMP members choose a union as their labor model, how will this impact the delivery of policing services in Leduc and the associated costs? So I think, as we said, costs are going to go up, and Shane kind of gave you a bit of an estimate. Other than costs, would you say there'll be other impacts that they could see?
So I guess when we talk about costs, we're referring to more so salary or benefits, depending on what the bargaining and the results of that bargaining looks like. If there are other impacts, we can't comment on those because we just won't know, right?
Right.
I mean, we don't even know if a union's been selected, what that's going to look like. So it's too premature at this point, and so we can't comment on what will be or will not be, right? Especially, I mean, is it safe to say there's going to be a pay raise? I think there will be. What that looks like, and it might be a pay raise as well as you know, a change in benefits as well. It's really hard to say. I can't comment on that, and it would be wrong for us to even speculate. So.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
Far be it from me to tempt you into an improper speculation. Okay, are there any updates for retro member pay since the expiration of the last Treasury Board agreement in 2017? And yeah, I think the same thing. We know that the bargaining agreement could be retroactive. It will likely be retroactive, but the specifics around that, again, they're pretty much
Yeah, and that's
unknown,
why we
right?
encourage everybody to put aside 2.5%, which helps, and if it does come to that, then they're somewhat prepared for it.
Okay. Cameron's third question. RCMP and municipalities have different fiscal years. With equalized billing now in place, is there a way to have some sort of calendar year costs so that municipalities can accrue better?
Yeah, so this one, it's kind of an interesting comment that Cameron makes, and I don't see him on the line actually, so we probably can take a little more liberty at his expense. But, and I see Peter and Airdrie agrees with me, so we'll just keep running with this. So, you know, when it comes to, like, Cameron's referred to this as equalized billing, and really what we did is we actually just took what we billed and divided it by 4, in essence. We didn't really, it's not equalized billing as much, and so, but what Cameron is alluding to is, could we give you a calendar year forecast? So in your Q1 billing, when you get that, you will have a forecast for your next fiscal year. So if you take your last quarter, or sorry, our last quarter, which would be your first quarter, and or you take the last fiscal year and divide that by 4, so you take 1 quarter of that, and then you take the next forecast for the next 3 quarters, and you add that up. That should give you your calendar year forecast, or calculation, if you will. And that's the best way I can probably provide an answer on that question. It's not an easily done situation, but if you look at it from that Q1 billing when we provide the forecast, that will probably provide you sort of the information that you need. Hopefully that makes sense. And if it doesn't, please get a hold of me and I can probably explain that a little bit differently.
Okay. And then Cameron's last question, which I think we touched on, strategy that for the RCMP to address resource shortages.
I don't know if there's much more I can really say in that regard.
Okay. So hopefully when Cameron listens to this later, we've answered his questions. If not, again, email me, get in touch. So going back up to the chat here, so we had a question from Wally Ferris. Given the committee is small, how are small towns, i.e. 15K and under, how are their needs and requests identified as negotiations are in progress? So I can talk a bit about that, and I don't know if you want to talk a bit about that. So as I said before, we're very lucky that the province has appointed us as an associate member to sit at the committee, and Tanya Thorne is our AUMA representative for the committee, and I go to the meetings as well. And I think Tanya's from Okotoks, so that's about 30,000, a little bit larger than the 15,000. But I think she's very mindful, and I think AUMA is very mindful as well that our members have diverse needs, and especially in policing, we do see, you know, small towns, smaller communities have very different needs, and things look very different than larger urban centers, and a lot of geographies, proximity to a large urban center, that all plays into that uniqueness. And I think you can see that reflected particularly in our asking for flexibility and a focus on regionalization for those factors to be considered in bargaining. We also have, AUMA has a small communities committee, so we loop them in for our policy development process, and they've been helping out around policing. And even the police working group, we made an effort to make sure that we had a range of municipalities being represented. So I think as AUMA, as an organization, we do try to represent all of our members' needs. And yeah, so that would be, I think, how we bring it to the table. And Cheryl, if you just maybe wanted to talk to you about, because you, I guess, also advocate for policing smaller communities.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, and I can assure you, you're well represented by Kelly and Tanya at the table. And in addition, other provinces also have municipal reps at the table, and their concerns are consistent with what Kelly and Tanya are expressing as well for community. So in terms of the province, often our concerns are aligned as well, especially with the smaller communities out there. We're all concerned about costs and the sustainability, quality of service, etc. So I think overall, the representation around the Contract Management Committee includes all municipalities regardless of size, as well as, of course, the provincial police service.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Wally. So the next one, Bernie, will we get a copy of the presentation with notes? No, we won't be giving out a copy of this particular presentation with the notes. We will post a recording on YouTube, and we'll send out the link to that through our digest. Okay, so Karen, I'm going to say Bodie. I hope that's right. Could we get a summary of costs for all of these initiatives? So we don't actually know what the costs are yet, because most of them are still pending decisions, but it's something that would be worked into your multi-year financial plan, right, Shane?
That's correct, yeah. So we will put some costs in there based on sort of what our forecasts are. So, for example, I'll pick on ballistic shields there. The cost is anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 per shield. Again, we don't know if, you know, a detachment needs one or they need three or what that looks like. So it's still quite infant with regards to that, so it's kind of hard to speculate, and even the costs aren't finalized. So we'll do what we can in the multi-year financial plans, though, to make sure that these new items are included somehow in that regard.
Yeah, I know it's probably frustrating for you guys to hear us be like, yeah, you're going to have more costs. We don't know what they are, but you'll have more, so just, you know, budget for them.
Our goal in telling you about this equipment is that at least you have a heads up that it's coming, and as soon as we know, we're able to provide that information a little bit quicker for you, so once it gets finalized. So anyway, we try to give you as much as we can ahead of time, because in the past I don't think that we've done as good a job in that regard. So
yeah, and yeah, so like I said, these webinars are something that we hope you find useful, but any feedback that you have about how we could change it or how we could open up that flow of conversation to be better for you guys, I think everyone in the room is willing to do that. So, okay. So Karen is also asking, so for back pay, will this be a phased approach? For example, if there's a 5% retro pay each year or 1% a year, budgeting for this is going to be a challenge, and it could be a challenge for council to approve new and additional members. I think we would definitely argue for a phased approach.
It's one of the things that has been discussed, certainly here in Alberta. I don't know if other provinces and territories have had similar discussions. So it very well, I can't guarantee it, but it very well might make its way into the submission that we're going to be taking to Treasury Board Secretariat for their consideration. It might be one of the points that we put in there.
Yeah, because I think it's, especially if those first-year costs are going to be significant, you know, we recognize that's a burden, especially on municipalities, because you guys can't run deficits. So, yeah, I think we're aware of that, but thanks for bringing it up again and just, you know, affirming that as an issue. So then Bernie commented, in the Calgary region, we're looking at a regional municipal force. And, yeah, I've heard Tanya talk about that, too. And I think Red Deer, too, is doing a business case as to whether or not they want to look at their own municipal force. So that's, has Surrey actually severed their RCMP contract or not yet?
Not at this point, no.
Yeah.
No. See, it's different in BC, because in BC they actually have to have the provincial government approve.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if that's taken place yet.
No,
so
yeah,
so until that takes place, you know, things continue on as normal, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Peter, will you be keeping everyone informed regarding bargaining outcomes? Everyone except you. No, I'm kidding. We'll keep everyone informed. Yes, as soon as we know something, we'll either let you know through a webinar, through digest. Policing is one of our priority issues this year, so yeah, we'll keep you as informed as we can, especially when we start getting more details about what the agreements look like and how they'll impact you, because we want you guys to be as prepared as you can be. Okay. Okay. Now it's okay to pick on this. Yes, good. Okay, Ken Morrison, are you looking at guaranteed home sale to allow members to relocate sooner?
Yeah, so no, we're not. So I know, Ken, you know the answer to this one, but we did this quite a while back. I think it was in the 90s, and unfortunately the program went away for various reasons, most of which I don't know why, but and it hasn't really had any more traction to come back again. So there, at this point in time, there is no plan for a guaranteed home sale at this point.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty similar to the next question from Richard. With vacancy, should the RCMP not be providing incentives to assist filling these due to sale of houses to ensure that transfers are facilitated rather than delayed?
Yeah, there is there's a program in our relocation packages, and I don't want to get into too much about it, but it does cover losses related to home sales to specific amounts and their taxation implications. So some members are not willing to take that incentive because of the taxation implication, and so maybe it's their lack of understanding of it or whatnot. And you know, in some cases the losses could be quite significant, and so you know, they're not prepared to take those losses, and so they're not prepared to sell their homes for anything less than whatever, you know, they've got a target that they've set for themselves. So you know, so we're limited as an organization. We can't force them to sell their homes for losses either, right? So we're stuck in some places, but there are incentives there, if you would call it that. There are some, you know, advantages that they can take into consideration. They just, you know, again, it's the tax implication that's the downside of it. So anyway.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads nicely into the next question from Wally. Is the vacancy issue a problem in all communities or only in certain communities? And if so, can it somehow be equalized?
You know, when we look at when we go back to that conversation about soft vacancies, I think there's soft vacancies in a lot of detachments. I don't know what they look like. We picked on Leduc quite significantly, but if we were to say look at a place like Bonnyville, perhaps, maybe they're not as bad off as Leduc is, or maybe Brooks, Alberta, right? It's really hard to say. I know some places where there isn't these types of issues at all, and they may have just one or two vacancies, and those are the hard vacancies where they're waiting for people to come in, or you know, people are on their way out. Human resourcing is a full-time job, and the bigger the unit, so like as big as Leduc is, it's a full-time commitment to manage those resources and make sure the chairs are filled with bums, right? And so it's a full-time job. Our commanders and our HR folks are doing the best that they can. And some of the challenges when it comes to soft vacancies, they just simply can't backfill them, right? So, and that's because of policy-driven initiatives. So, but at the end of it all, some are better off than the Leducs of the world, if you will. So.
Poor Leduc.
Yeah.
Reading the complex. Yeah, and just a little bit further to that, so Bernie Morton just commented that there's an imbalance with respect to housing and allowances and sales because members don't have to live in their serving community.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Next question from Karen. With RCMP low resources, why is K Division restricting community peace officers from doing theft under $5,000, mischief under $5,000, and non-injury collisions as per Solicitor General policy and procedures?
So that's a very good question. There's a lot of liability that comes with investigating those offenses, and so those discussions are being held regarding what that's going to look like in the future. Some of it is just simply down to training and ability, but the CPO program is going through a change as well, and we expect with those changes will come some changes to some of those liabilities and also the ability to do some of these things. So at this point it's quite infant in stages, but there is conversations being held between ourselves and the ministry in regards to what we're going to look at and how those changes are going to impact it, so that maybe in the future CPOs can assist with those files.
So just back to the housing question from Tony, would it help if municipalities provided member housing to expedite transfers in? Yeah,
I like that. It's a good idea. We're looking at a community, so going back to that whole, the issue is we've got some hard-hit, I'll call them oil field towns, that are struggling, and that's where we're feeling the impact of these members unable to sell their homes. So it's not necessarily the destination, it's where they're coming from that's the issue. So, you know, it's probably fine in Leduc, but it's not as fine in in maybe Slave Lake or Peace River or something like that. And I'm just drawing some examples. But so having said all of that, if there is the towns or cities provide housing and they want to become landlords in that regard, we'd be interested in having those conversations. One of the challenges that we'll face, though, and I'll just, because Tony, it's your question, if someone moves to Devon and they don't want to live in a house that you provide and they prefer to buy their own, then they're obligated to do that, and we can't really restrict them in that regard. So, or you may want to provide a house there, but then they want to live in Stony Plain. Well, as long as they fulfill the mandate of the on-call and everything else that's required of them from an operational perspective, we can't restrict them from living in Stony Plain. So there are a number of things that we have to work through, but we definitely are open to some of those conversations. We're actually looking at a community in the north that suffered economically quite significantly over the last 3 or 4 years, and trying to find ways to not only get our members out of that community that have been there for past 10 years in quite a number of instances, but get them out, and then also look at leasing back property. And we're in discussions with the municipality in regards to whether they'd be willing to buy some of those homes and lease back to us in that regard. So there's a lot of things going on that we're looking at what we can do to make it easier, and that's just one example. So.
Another question from Tony. Has there been a look at collaboration with city police forces if the RCMP is having difficulty in filling hard and soft vacancies?
Not really, no. We haven't looked at it in that regard. I think when you look at the police universe, I think we're all sitting in the same context. Like I say, in talking to our folks in Edmonton and Calgary, and a couple of others, they're all looking for the best candidate out there. And while maybe Calgary's pay package is better than the RCMP's, that's not necessarily enticing the folks who want to go do something completely different. So we haven't looked at it in that regard. It's not something that we wouldn't look at, but so to the point in question, that's on our general duty side, but we do work with Edmonton and Calgary and a number of other venues, federal organized crime teams and so on and so forth. So we still have those partnerships that take place. So. Oh, and yeah, so thanks, Cheryl. Thanks for reminding me on that. I completely forgot about this. So something new in our Reservists program as well that we have just recently. So previously, you had to be a retired member of the RCMP to become a reservist, but now we're actually, we've opened the doors a little bit further on that. And so if you're an ex-Municipal Police Service member, so whether you work for Calgary or Edmonton or Camrose or whoever, we'll also look at you as a reservist for our organization as well. So that's something new as well. So thanks for reminding me of that.
So I'm just going to group two of the questions here because I think they're pretty similar. So Peter's wondering, to help with resourcing, could RCMP allow municipalities with security-cleared peace officers to have access to CPIC? And Robert Young also, will CPOs have access to the RCMP radio channel?
Okay, so I think we got two different questions.
Oh, okay. Well, you're the expert,
so let's
take them one at a time.
Yeah, let's take Peter's first.
Okay.
So to help with resourcing, could RCMP allow municipalities with security-cleared peace officers have access to CPIC? So security-cleared peace officers, so if they're in our building already, they probably are security-cleared, and community peace officers do have a level of access to CPIC already. And I'm going to call it level 3, and I might have that completely wrong. I can't put it in context, but they do have a level of access to CPIC when they're out on the road. Either some communities, they actually have a link on a laptop that they utilize. I think there's only 6 in the province, whereas all the rest call into the sheriff's dispatch center, and that's how they get their access to CPIC in that regard. So
yeah, I know we had a request from the Alberta Association of Community Peace Officers to see if we could get a standalone CPIC terminal in the provincial radio control center. Yeah, I was kind of new to the issue, but it sounded like for the people that didn't have the link, they were calling into the provincial radio control center, who was then calling into the sheriff's dispatch center to run license plates if they were doing a street check. So I know AUMA supported having another terminal for CPOs to access.
Okay.
But I mean, I would assume it's a funding thing, like you wouldn't.
It must be,
RCMP
yes.
is like if you're cleared, you're cleared.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
No. Yeah, and then in actual reality, if you're a community peace officer in the province and you have a level, at this point, I'll call it level 1, CPO, then you're entitled to that level of CPIC information. And really, when we talk about the different levels, the only real difference between what our regular members have and what the CPOs have is that it comes down to our monitoring of people and so on and so our intelligence piece. So that's the only piece that really the CPOs are not entitled to. But they're entitled to traffic, registries information from the province of BC, from the province of Saskatchewan as well as Alberta, and all stolen vehicles, all people on warrants right across the country. So they have quite a vast amount. It's really one limited piece that they really have no authority to begin with and that they don't have access to. So they have quite a bit. It's not common knowledge as to what they have, but they're just missing one small piece. They have pretty much the whole pie.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if you're not sure about what the CPOs in your community can access, feel free to email me and we can look into it specifically for your jurisdiction, what the right process is. So, okay.
So sorry, what was the second question?
So sorry, the second one. Sorry, Wally, we're just skipping you because I thought it was the same question, but it's not. So will CPOs have access to the RCMP radio channel? Oh yeah, you're right, that is a different question.
Yeah. So,
database, radio channel.
Yeah, no, they won't have access to the RCMP radio channels, but what they will have access to is a group site, or a group channel, if you will. And so it's something that both the RCMP and the CPOs have access to. So it's just a matter of switching over to that channel and operating, and they can communicate on that channel. So they do have a shared talk group is what really they refer to it in the AFRAX world. So, yeah.
All right, so Wally's question, given the significant rural crime issue in Alberta, will the new funding model include the counties paying for some of the policing costs? Is it possible to get a breakdown of expense associated to the rural areas as opposed to the urban areas?
So, yeah, that's not something that's been decided. I think Wally's talking about the Police Act, and so I'll let you talk on that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we do. It's a bit contentious for our members. As you can imagine, our under 5,000 don't want to start paying for policing, and our over 5,000s are like, why are we the only ones paying for policing? But as an association, we've taken the position that we want a funding model where everyone who is receiving policing services bears a portion of that cost, keeping in mind, and that does include municipal districts and counties, keeping in mind that not all of our members have the same ability to pay. So the principles that our members have proposed and that have been endorsed by the membership is looking at a funding model where we use population to simulate demand and property assessment base to simulate ability to pay, and working out a more equitable funding model kind of based on that. But that's more work that the working group will be doing. And we do want to try and get some information from our members in terms of what rural areas are paying. And there are rural areas. I shouldn't say that no one under 5,000 pays for policing, because there are some areas that do have enhanced officers where they pay directly for the cost of an enhanced policing, so they pay the full salary of an RCMP member. But yeah, we have some digging to do to get a better picture of just the total cost of policing in the province. And then once we know that, try to figure out a way that's equitable for the province and municipalities and everyone that receives police services to sort of share that cost equitably. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the Police Act review, and right now it's strictly the province is strictly doing an engagement with stakeholders. So depending what happens, we haven't been given any direction at this point to take it any further. But once we hopefully get that direction to look at things, and like Kelly said, certainly any input that AUMA provides in terms of proposed costing models, and that will be welcome for the province to consider.
Yeah, they haven't quite got, like I said, we're sort of in an issues identification phase right now, and they have heard from us that we think the police funding model is a big issue, but we haven't actually built any options for a new funding model. But yeah, our position as an organization is that municipal districts and counties should be paying a portion of those costs if they're getting RCMP services. Okay, so the next question. Has there been any discussion to allow citizens on patrol groups to have access to AFRACs to ensure timely information is relayed between volunteers and on-shift RCMP members?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and actually I don't know the answer to that, Kevin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that back, and I'll ask our AFRACs folks, and then I'll get back to you. So either I'll provide an email back to Kelly so she can send it out to everybody, or however you folks prefer it, and I may even just get a hold of you directly too. So, but I'll get an answer for you.
Great.
And then I just saw Peter Brown's comments on the bottom there, and so I probably didn't explain the intelligence piece enough. So maybe what I'll do, Peter, is I'll explain a little bit better. So CPOs do have access to stolen vehicle information, so license plates, which does come down to officer safety. So the piece that they don't have, the piece of the pie that's missing, is, and we're going to pick on Leduc again. So if Cameron Chisholm is an outlaw motorcycle gang member, and we put him on CPIC as such in a fashion that we're monitoring his daily habits and what he does and where he goes and so on and so forth, that's the piece of the pie that the CPOs don't get. They don't get the intelligence hits. What they'll get is if that Cam Chisholm is armed and dangerous, they will know that Cam Chisholm is armed and dangerous. So if they're sitting in a vehicle on the side of the road at 3 o'clock in the morning, parked, pulled over with Cam Chisholm, they'll know who they're dealing with right away when it comes to that officer safety piece. So they're not missing the officer safety piece. What they're just missing is the organized crime piece, that intelligence piece that he's part of outlaw motorcycle gang X. And that's really in essence what they're missing. But if that vehicle is stolen, they'll know that it's stolen. If he's associated to another person who's armed and dangerous, wanted on Canada-wide warrants or so on and so forth, they'll get all of that. It's a very small sliver of the pie that they're missing, but it's very, very small. And so from an officer safety perspective, the CPOs have that covered. So hopefully that kind of clarifies it a bit.
Yeah, so we'll just wait. I don't see any more questions in the queue. So we'll just wait a couple minutes if you guys want to type in any other questions and comments. Yeah, we have lots of time, or we can end early. It's up to you guys.
Perfect. Yeah, clearly I didn't answer that question very clearly, so sorry about that. Maybe while we're waiting, I'll just interject. So our new commanding officer is in the province. He started back in December of 2018. His name is Curtis Zablocki, Deputy Commissioner Curtis Zablocki, and he's been out and about a bit, and we are getting him around to some communities to meet with folks. So as time permits, we'll also have him available for other meetings as well. And then we will see most AUMA folks in the fall at the next AUMA conference in the fall, which is where this year?
It's in Edmonton this year.
Oh, it's in Edmonton.
Yeah.
No road trips this year.
Yeah.
So, but Deputy Commissioner Zablocki will be at AUMA in Edmonton in the fall then.
Yeah, awesome. Can you bring some police dogs? Maybe a police horse. Oh, okay. We have a question from Paul. We were told there's an increase in costs coming driven by a change in vehicles available, an increase of $4,000 to $5,000 per unit. Is this accurate?
There's for specific vehicles, the Ford Tahoe, I believe, is no longer available, and it was just due to a bidding issue in the tender. So we're replacing that with the Dodge. I'm sorry, the name is escaping me now. But there is a slight increase in the cost for specific vehicles, and we are not sure which municipalities that cost is going to be coming to, just because we don't know where they're currently allocated. So it may hit some municipalities, it may not.
So the Chev Tahoe is no longer available?
It's the Ford. I think it's the Ford that's no longer
Ford
available.
Explorer?
Yes, I'm sorry.
So one of the vehicles are no longer available,
yeah.
but having said that, it's being replaced with a Dodge, something or other?
Yeah, I can get the details on that and
Okay.
confirm. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's a standard vehicle is not available, and it's being
Yeah.
replaced by a different one that has a slightly higher cost, but it does have some advantages to it as well, and lower write-offs, which means there's better savings down the line on it too. So,
Okay, so it lasts a little bit longer then?
Yes, yes.
And is that a cost for this year or
That'll be coming in 2019.
in 2019?
Yeah.
Okay.
for the coming fiscal year.
Okay.
So I guess one of the things you may want to look at is how your fleet is deployed and how you would like to see those costs applied. So maybe you have 3 vehicles are getting replaced this year, and so maybe maybe one vehicle gets replaced with this new vehicle, and maybe we have 2 older ones that you're able to utilize, or the other vehicle that's not because obviously one's not available and one is. So maybe the other vehicle that is available, you go to those instead. So just depending on how you manage those costs.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see any more questions or comments. I think we'll wrap up here. I'd like to thank Shane and Rita and Cheryl for taking the time to join us for this webinar. I'd like to thank all of you guys for calling in and for all of your questions and comments. It's really great. Some of our upcoming events are on this slide, including our Spring Municipal Leaders Caucus, which is happening March 27th and 28th in Edmonton. So if you want to register for that, you can go to the webpage. And like I said, we'd like to try and have these webinars after our CMC meetings just to pass along information and try to keep you guys as informed as we can as to what kind of things are coming down the pipe. And yeah, if you have any feedback at all, just let me know. It's ksantarosa@auma.ca. I'll just type it in the chat box actually, because I've realized my name isn't I not spell my name right. I sometimes don't spell my name right. So yeah, you can email me if you have any questions or call me anything related to policing. And yeah, thanks so much and have a great day.
Take care, everybody.